It's Micah Bell time. Notre Dame has landed Houston Kincaid standout cornerback Micah Bell, who just committed to Notre Dame on Twitter. Ryan, let's just get into it, man. This is a big time. I mean, look, y'all, we're rocking out the double gap closer shirt tonight, okay? Because this kid, in so many different ways, Ryan, has checked boxes for Notre Dame. And we'll dive into all of that during the show. But this is just kind of big picture, Ryan.
Yep.
This is huge for Notre Dame in so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. When you think about it, for one, first cornerback in the class now since the Justin Red decommitment. That is an obvious need when we're talking about the numbers. Notre Dame wants to get two corners at least in this class. That's the number that we know for sure. So you hit half your needs on this one commitment, which is fantastic. And then why it's such a bigger deal is that this kid is really, really talented. Like we were just talking before we started of just the track background he has. I mean, this kid's a sub 2100 meter, 200 runner. He's a 10-3 100-meter guy, and he is also out of the state of Texas. So when you put all those things together, Notre Dame got a dynamic defensive back, position of need, out of a state that they are making an absolute priority here moving forward. So in all those ways, Micah Bell is truly a gap closer.
I think the cornerback aspect of it, you talked about getting to maybe more than two. I looked at that as sort of a luxury. And you wanted two for sure, but the big thing is, and we'll get into the class impact of this a little bit. It was the impact was needed to be there, and this is such a unique kid. And here's look the rest of this show. We're going to talk a lot about his speed. He's got truly elite speed. That word gets kind of thrown around a lot. Maybe sometimes when it shouldn't. This kid has elite speed, and we'll give you some numbers as to back that up. But this is also a kid that had offers from Harvard, Vanderbilt, Stanford, Duke. And you have to get those kind of kids. He's an emerging prospect. He's a guy that's kind of really climbed up the rankings here this spring to the point where he's a top 100 commit or top 100 player on 247. He's a borderline top 100 player by ESPN and Rivals. Had offers from Texas, Tennessee. I mean, big time player, Ryan. But his recruitment was a little interesting because this is a kid that Notre Dame did not offer him till like mid-March. Yeah. And this is a guy that got on a little bit late. And again, it just kind of adds to he didn't just break out for Notre Dame. He was kind of a breakout for a lot of people. And part of it was his brother. His brother Dylan was kind of considered the guy for them last year, even though he didn't necessarily have the production that Micah did and just as a rushing guy. But his brother Dylan, who signed with Georgia, was and Micah's a smaller, skinnier kid. I think that kind of maybe masked him a little bit. To what he could be. But, this is a kid that obviously broke out this spring, and it was partly on the track, because of his track results. But, Ryan, this is a kid that was a 1,000-yard running back in high school. And then I know we're going to have a lot of people are going to ask about the offensive part, but, you can really see that legit speed when this kid's playing offense. And so, when you talked to him, Ryan, before the visit and after the visit, what really was it about Notre Dame that made this the move for Micah Bell, in your opinion? The things that he loved about Notre Dame, what allowed them to go from not even being on his radar in mid-March to by July 1st, he's in the class, and it hasn't been in doubt for like a month.
I know.
I mean, so what was it?
It's really interesting, Brian, because I mean, even leading up to that visit, we were kind of like, this is trending really well. Like, I don't know if anybody could even be considered a real contender here right now, kind of going into that visit. And then he takes the visit, and the weird part is that, he drops the top 10, says, hey, I'm committing on July 1st, but then you never hear any other visits that were lined up, right? Like, it was just Notre Dame, which was bizarre.
He ended up going to Houston, which is like in his hometown. He's from Houston.
Sure.
But it was just like, the point is he didn't announce it. He just put some pictures after the visit on his Instagram page.
Right. Exactly. I mean? Yeah. And obviously, flying all the way up to Notre Dame and just going to local Houston's a little bit different, obviously, too. Right. So it's something where when I talk to Micah, and he's a different type of dude, honestly, because most corners you kind of think of are like very extremely talkative, or guys that, kind of, are a little confidence on their sleeves type of players, right? Micah Bell is very quiet, unassuming. He doesn't really have that aura of a corner traditionally, to be honest, but he knew exactly what he valued in making this decision. And judging by not only his words, but also by his actions of the top 10 schools he dropped, high academic kid, right? I mean, we've talked about this a bunch. He had Vanderbilt, he had Harvard, he had Stanford, he had all the high academic institutions that you think of in the country on his final top 10 that were also included with, places like Tennessee and Texas and, the mixture of those teams as well. But the high academic part is, I think, the biggest thing for me. And, it was just he fell in love quickly with the staff. And I really think after that visit, it was done at that point, like everyone knew where he was going to go at that point.
I mean, you're talking about, like I said, a kid from Houston, Texas, that has an offer from Harvard, and the fact that he included Harvard in his top 10. We kind of made a joke about this. When he listed his top 10, it was like 2-5. It was like 5 and 5, like polar opposites. It was like Michigan State. It was Texas, Tennessee, Michigan State, Baylor, and I keep forgetting the fifth school. And then on the other side, it was like Notre Dame, Duke, Stanford, Harvard, Vanderbilt, you know what I mean? It was just like, okay, that's an interesting group. Like, you don't see that very often,
Well, and honestly, as soon as he dropped that top 10, I hadn't even talked to him at that point too much, like just some exchanging of DMs. And, we did like a feature article on him before that or whatever, but I hadn't really talked to him serious because that was the first time that we knew exactly what the timeline was. Right. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I saw that grouping, I'm like, my man's going to Notre Dame. Like, you know it. I mean, you just saw the group of schools. You're just like, we already liked Notre Dame. Right. And the fact that he included all those high academic institutions, it was just like, yeah, that's probably a little bit of a dead giveaway. All I needed at that point was CJ Carr to tweet out a little shamrock and at Micah Bell. And then that probably would have been the end of it.
Yeah. Well, and he gave a comment to you before his visit, in a preview article you did with him before the visit. He said, Coach Freeman and Coach Mickens, he said, just were on him constantly. He said, they talk to me all the time. And the direct comment was, they made me feel wanted. They really, he said, and have made me really feel wanted. And that was a big part of it too, was, when you get on a kid late, and again, now in the world we live in now, getting on a kid March before his senior year is considered late. That's just the reality of it. Getting on a kid late, you've got to put in the work. And Mike Mickens certainly did that. Marcus Freeman did that. Chad Bowden's done that. And this staff made this young man a big time priority. And now he's in the class, and that is huge for Notre Dame.